Here we have gray resin and black resin, and one of those has properties that are superior to the other. Let's find out. After quite an expensive trip to the emergency room, I can happily attest that the black resin has some other redeeming qualities despite the taste. And those qualities have nothing to do with printing duration, print quality, wear and tear, or other mechanical properties. You see, if you are into miniature printing, then chances are you're also into miniature painting. Which means if you are like me, you will paint a lot. Quite a lot. So I hope at the end of this video you will all be asking your grey miniatures the same question. You see, the issue is, if you want to paint your new miniature, usually you go ahead and prime it black, which is all fun and games. But the more intricate and detailed a miniature becomes, the harder it gets. Especially if you are using a spray can. You can see a lot of those recesses are impossible to reach. But even if you are utilizing an airbrush, you might be able to reach those parts, but it becomes very tedious and takes a long time. And a lot of those inner parts you can't even reach with an airbrush. And in the proper light you will always see the grey shining through. It also becomes much more annoying if you're not only priming one miniature, how about 100 at the same time? So yeah, if you're going to buy a miniature on a sprue, then it's going to be grey. But we 3D printers, we have a choice. Why not just simply print it black and skip this whole priming nonsense? And hear me out, I had enough time to think about this while I painted over 100 dwarves that I primed over the course of a whole workday. The reason is simple. You really want to not skimp on priming. And I don't mean priming mechanically, but on the paint level. You want to have a perfect, smooth color to start painting on. And black is the obvious choice for most painting techniques. But it is especially relevant in those fast painting techniques like slab job, especially if you combine it with dry brushing or zenithal highlighting. If those shadows aren't primed and blackened correctly, the end result will look awful. You can see it and it will destroy the whole fast, nice looking paint job that you were aiming for. So if you print your miniatures black, you will remove both problems. You are always going to have a perfect black in those shadowed areas, and you don't have to prime it, saving a lot of time. I can hear you literally screaming at me. But RT, if you don't prime your miniature, won't the paint fall off? And the answer is no. Oh, you want proof? Okay, let's get into it. So in my experience, paint falling off a miniature is an issue that dates back to metal miniatures. And it's true there, paint will fall off. But it doesn't happen with plastic miniatures, especially not with 3D printed resin miniatures. And the reason is obvious. We are printing those miniatures layer by layer. So mechanically speaking, our miniatures are already quite coarse on the surface, which is exactly what a primer will also do to your miniature. Here's the example I painted earlier. As you can see, no rubbing or fingernail can take the paint off. I literally had to scrape it off with a metal object. As long as you won't do that to your miniatures, you're going to be fine. I also did a little bit more of random friction testing, and then I, manhandled the miniature quite a bit. And as you can see, I rather break pieces off than have the paint fall off. And here's an example that is over 16 years old. When I started out with my first army, I didn't prime it. And the reason is simple. My parents didn't allow me to use those toxic spray cans. Not outside, not in the house. So, it was my only option to paint them without priming. And so far, after 16 years, I haven't had a single piece of paint fall off. And I even risked to rub the paint off of this a little relic from my past, and it didn't happen. Also, if you're going to use zenithal highlight as your painting technique, you will use a diluted primer anyway. So in the end, you're going to prime the miniature, but only on the upper parts. And the shaded parts, well, those are deep recesses. You won't have any mechanical interaction with that anyway. But if you're still not convinced, you can just print the miniature black and then prime it black, and you will still have a much easier time priming the miniature entirely black to an homogeneous black base layer. Are there any downsides to printing miniatures with black resin instead of gray resin? Well, mostly no. The products that I use to 3D print, they are both offered in black or gray or clear resin. So availability is not a problem. Also, the price is technically the same. The only minor problem that I could find and that I ran into is that it's a little bit harder to spot any printing related issues if you inspect the miniature after it comes off your printer. So when the miniature is still wet and you haven't washed it yet or cured, it is a little bit harder to inspect them when there are very tiny details if it's black compared to gray. But this is a very minor loss in time compared to how much time you save if you don't have to prime your miniatures. In a big project like the dwarfs that I was commissioned to paint, it is literally 1/7 to 1/6 of the work time. Well, I hope you learned something new. Have fun printing and painting, and I'll see you in the next one.